Mic check.
Starting to come in. Go ahead and share this post for us. We're waiting on a couple more of our people to come on in, but y'all go ahead and start sharing the post for us. We appreciate it a whole lot. All right, everybody that's on social media, go ahead and share the post for us. And we'll get going in a little bit.
Good evening, everybody.
All right, how's it going, folks? Y'all doing all right today?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep,
ma'am.
just came home from work.
Just came home from work. Okay. Now, I made that money. I see you, cuz make his own money. All right,
Con.
Miss Jackson, what's going on? Squinting like you supposed to have your glasses on.
Oh no, it's just the way I'm sitting. I'm fluffy.
I got you. Miss Perkins, how you doing?
Yes, sir. I'm great.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on. We'll go ahead and get started, and everybody else that's coming in or come on in, but we got enough to get started.
All new.
Say it again.
This restream and all this kind of stuff. This all new. I'm confused.
Well, you got we about to jump. We about to knock down a whole year tonight. So I figured that if you've been successful for 12 months, might as well go and switch it up a little bit. And so we switched it up a little bit. All right, but I want to thank everybody that's watching on social media. You all go ahead and share this post for us so we can get a few folk on there. Make sure y'all comment for us, and then we promise to bring it.
Because I can't share nothing.
And Shanae still in jail. She was in jail last time. She's what they call a repeat, a habitual, a habitual rat truth teller, telling it like it is, and I appreciate her so much.
Offender.
Huh? Yeah.
She's a habitual offender.
I'm keeping my eye on her in Gainesville, just trying to stay close to her so I can figure out how to do this thing. And but I thank everybody so much, and so go ahead and share the post. But here's a topic that was just on my mind, and I really want to have some real discussion because I truly don't even claim to know, but I think with this group right here, I think we can get some good productive discussion out of it. And so the topic that we were talking about is pessimism versus optimism. And progress versus the same old tricks. And I'm gonna tell you what kind of made me think about it. um, you know, I was my wife and I we were riding through Duval checking on my house, and I saw all these kids riding around on scooters last week sometime. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember seeing something like that in the paper. Well, it wasn't kids, it was everybody, not just kids, everybody. And I saw them like all down the road by bus stops. And so I was like, wow, they put them in our neighborhood. and so I was trying to figure out, should I be happy that they put them in our neighborhood? Or is it something up with it? And the fact that, because normally you'd be like, well, hey, they put something somewhere else, we should be able to get it in our neighborhoods too. And I really had two different thoughts, what's really the deal? And then another thought that, they thought about us when they did something, because it's, you always see in other neighborhoods and you see around the other parts of the city.
Are you talking about those, rental?
Yeah, you pay like you have a little app or something, and they come from your bank account, I think, charge it from your.
Yeah.
And so normally you see that like in other areas, like downtown tourists and all that kind of stuff. But they got them in our neighborhoods, and I mean everybody riding around here. Kids, they got cars. They all over the place. I mean, I ride down little roads in Lincoln in little regular neighborhoods. They all down there on the side of the road, and so I was like, wow, am I optimistic? Am I pessimistic? And then another thing I was thinking about, when the whole coronavirus thing came out, there was a big talk about, our community seemed to be getting it at or not getting it, but the chances for death seemed to be higher. And we needed to address that, and we needed to, to make sure that was a part of the conversation. And then when the vaccines came, a lot of us were kind of, apprehensive about doing that whole piece right there. And I don't really care either way. People think, it's personal. And but they when they come, okay. So we're saying that things are going where it's higher, and so when the vaccines come, then we're like, nah, I don't trust them. And it seems like we get caught up in this whole quandary of, being pessimistic or optimistic. Is this progress or is it the same old tricks? Kind of like, with the integration and stuff like that. And I just wanted to have a conversation on where are we? When things happen, in the world that we live in, how do we wrestle with the idea of, is it real or is it another trick? Because that's what we used to, just tricks. And so I want to have a conversation just about that. How do we measure progress? How do we look at it? That whole piece right there. So that's what was on my mind. Y'all help me out.
So I don't start the conversation, but I want to start this conversation.
Started.
So I want to speak specifically beginning with the whole deal with the scooter so we can transition into the conversation. Okay. It is not pessimism or optimism. I mean, it's realizing that our elected officials made this decision for them to be opportunistic. And what I say by that is the way that you measure real progress and change is if you're creating change by looking at priorities first. So in our community in Gainesville, the fact that in Gainesville, period, 44% of Black people over the poverty line, that there's a food desert in Gainesville, the fact that there is no access to adequate health care, the fact that our homeless population is exponentially higher than a lot of other places, the fact that the same week that they rolled out these new scooters, and the same week they did a 7% rate hike. And I don't know about anybody else, but we have the highest rates inside the actual state of Florida. You know that it's not real progress. Number one, it's a distraction. Number two, it's people in power saying, well, at least I gave you something. Y'all not happy with whatever I do. You see and measure true progress and change when you actually engage people that are impacted by real issues. In Gainesville, I always say that and be clear, I can speak on, this is not the first time that they did some BS. They overlook the true priorities and then stated, well, we don't understand why y'all not happy. This is the same county that they banned styrofoam. And this is the same county that we, in the city limits, we still using paper straws that are extremely crappy. And when you keep using money and resources for crap like that, while people are homeless and hungry, while we have the largest disparity in every quality of life indicator. That's from criminal justice, that's healthcare, that's the food security, that's the transportation access. Then that's how you know that there is no real progress. Because when you measure progress, you're going to see a benefit and an improvement in the quality of life of the people in the community.
Okay, so what is it that happened that we're able to say that was good? I mean, is it one of those things that you say or when all of them happen? What is there ever a time to celebrate, or do we? And I think my cousin, I haven't let it speak for itself, but Cud probably don't trust none of it. And I got to speak for when is there a time to celebrate, or do we just always just stay on the ground?
You do both. You walk in your chew bubble gum. You celebrate a win each time that you get a win, but you always make sure that we are in control of the narrative and making sure. So just because something gets passed, we might not like every part of it. You can celebrate the part that you do like and state that we don't like this part and this is why, and make them accountable for that. One of the reasons we never get true change is for one of the things is incrementalism. If you ever notice, I use the example of Asian hate. When that happened, that incident in Georgia, where the man went and shot up the massage parlors, they literally passed a bill in Congress, just like that, within months. Literally anything that is related to us trying to get the same level of advocacy, they want to, let's take baby steps. We can't move too fast. If we do change, it's going to scare people. And so they hold us hostage with incrementalism. Or it's just like with minimum wage increases. Living wage, when you look at the cost of living, it's going up each year, but then we waiting 10 and 15 years in order to increase minimum wage. So even by the time you do it, it hasn't caught up with all the other things that's happened. So we keep being subjected to incrementalism to say that's how we're going to create change. There'll never be any true change because it'll never keep up with what actually is going on. So I did a video today. One of the things we've been fighting for is that whenever they do development, because it's so inequitable, it needs to be done by a development review board so that the people know what's happening in their neighborhoods before instead of after the fact when the damage is already done. So we can celebrate that it now has been passed for that to happen, but then we also got to be mindful that we need to make sure that we have the right people on that development review board, because the development review board doesn't help if it's the same people making the same decisions. We got to be mindful to keep the people in the community engaged and make them be accountable for actually watching what's going on at the very beginning instead of coming in on the back end, because it's always easier to fix it. So yes, we celebrate, we got that win, but then we also be mindful, but yes, with that win, now there's more work to do. If you never celebrate, then the workers are going to be more overwhelming and a great deal more daunting. So you do celebrate, but you always still got to look at ways in order to make it better. And that's what you can look at it as a business decision. Any decision in your life, you're going to always celebrate the wins, whether it's a marriage, whether it's your job, whether you're self-employed, but you're always looking at how to make things better, because that's how you attain prosperity.
Are the wins truly wins if it's somebody that has historically not had your best interest at heart? Are the wins truly wins, or
I don't think so.
Are they games?
I don't think that there's a win until we are either on the level we're supposed to be on, which is what's in the scriptures. We're supposed to be those people above all people upon the face of the earth, or until we are so-called equal to. For instance, when they raised the this bill for the Asian hate, the only reason they do that is because they actually have ties with Asia. They trade with Asia. They politicize with Asia. For instance, like my landlord, he's an Asian, doesn't even live in Georgia. We were asking him about a house, because we've been looking for a house for a while, and he said he sold all his houses and now he in politics. Like, what an Asian doing in politics? That was a landlord. He was just in real estate. But the thing is, all they're doing is pacifying us. They keep coming up with ways to pacify us. And all we do is keep falling for the okie doke. There's no way that they could pass an Asian hate bill, then turn around and let an Asian get a $10,000 bond for shooting a 6-year-old black child. Now, I know they changed it a couple of days ago to $100,000 and they reapprehended him, but they were about to let this man go with $10,000 bond for shooting a black child out of his window. Swung a sledgehammer at the little boy because the little boy was going to get his bike out of the man's yard. Probably told him, y'all get out my yard, or something like that. You know how kids are in the neighborhood. They play in people's yards sometimes. And he's probably one of those neighbors don't want kids in his yard or whatever. But it's a child. And this man shot out of his window at this child, hit the child, could have killed the child. So the Asian hate is really have been on us. They wanted to pass an Asian hate bill because the real enemy, who they're oppressed by as well, was starting to hate on them. I just don't see us celebrating a win when there's no real win. We don't really have a win. We are surviving. We don't have any politics. We don't have armies. We don't have any infrastructure as a people. We don't have anything. All we are doing is surviving and passing on the survival to our children. That's it. And they keep pacifying us because they see that we keep keep educating ourselves, and we see what's going on. We complain about it. We march about it. We do everything. We've been marching for years. Marching hasn't done a thing. All it has done is get them to the table to say, okay, let's find something to pacify them with this time. The Civil Rights Bill, this time. But then we're going to do something else to make sure that they stay on the bottom. After the Civil Rights Bill, the crack epidemic. Get the CIA to bring in crack. Make sure Negroes don't get too educated, and make sure that they go from school to prison, or just kill them. And now that we've almost kind of come out of that situation, they put other things in place so that we can again be pacified. And then after the pacification, we'll again, Shalom, Willie Earl, how you doing? They'll again turn into something that's going to do something against us. For instance, why is it that the president in January, February started saying that he wanted the vaccine to go directly to Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans? That's something that us as Israelites say show who the Israelites are. He used our terminology. He didn't say African American. He didn't say Mexican. He didn't use Latino. He used our terminology. And then on top of that, if you want to get the majority of the people vaccinated, vaccinate all these so-called majority, these white folk. If we're the minority and we only make up 12, 14%, the Mexicans or Hispanics make up another 12, 14%, we're the minority. Why don't you vaccinate the majority? Then you will have a full, what do they call it? I think they called it a majority vaccination or something.
Herd immunity.
Herd immunity. Why are you worried about us for? You see what I'm saying? And now you have people that are taking the thing and they have no idea what it's going to do. They have never come up with a cure for the common cold, a cure for flu. It takes years to come up with vaccinations. They come up with things to pacify you for a common cold. You can take some cold medicine, it'll kind of knock out some stuff for you, but it's not a cure. It's not a cure. They've come up with no cure for cancers. They've been studying these things for years and still no cure. But for this thing that they don't know anything about, they came up with a so-called vaccination within months, and they're trying to pass it off onto our people.
So what? Go ahead, Jamie.
sorry. I got a few things before we go too far because Tori brought up some really good points, but I wanted to go back to the original question before I forget. I saw those kids too, Pastor Rawls in Jacksonville. Friday night I was up there and they were having a good time on the scooters. I was like, well, I didn't know what was going on because I forgot about the city passing, putting those electric scooters in the city or whatever. I had totally forgot about it. I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, to address your initial question, I think I agree with what both Tori, with all three of you, with both Tori, Shanae, and you said, Pastor Ross. But I think that it's a matter of determining what is it that you're actually celebrating. Like when you say, can we celebrate wins and losses, or can we celebrate wins when we're dealing with other things? I think each thing that we do or that we accomplish is we need to look at it as a milestone, in whatever capacity that it might be. But I think it's important for us to really dissect and understand what it is that we are actually celebrating. If it's a celebratory cause, it's kind of like what we were talking about. I don't know if it was last month's show that we did or the one before that, when we were talking about what was going on in, is it Michigan? They were doing a offering some type of retribution or reparations for Black people when we dug.
I think that was 2 months ago.
Okay, so when we dug deeper,
it was in Illinois.
In Illinois, thank you. When we dug deeper into what it was that they were actually doing, we realized that that's not anything really to celebrate. It sounds good on the outside. When you hear the word reparation for Black people, everybody like, yes, because that's what we've been waiting on for 300 years. We've been waiting on somebody to repay us for what our ancestors have contributed to this country. But when you really look at it and you start mulling through that thing, you realize, okay, this is nothing to celebrate. So I think it's okay to celebrate some things, but you need to really understand, what is it that you are celebrating? Is this really vital to the liberation of our people? Is this something that's really going to take us to the next step? Because, I mean, if you don't celebrate your wins, you don't have the momentum or the ambition to keep going. You got to have something that drives you and motivates you to continue to work toward whatever goal it is that you're working for. So yeah, I understand what Tori's saying, like, what do we celebrate when we have all these other things going on? Absolutely, totally get that. But if you do accomplish something, even if it's mediocre or seems simplistic or small, I think it's okay to say, "Ooh, okay, we got to that point. Now let's keep working toward this next goal." Now when we start talking about this vaccine and his medical and healthcare historically as it relates to Black and brown people or Black indigenous people of color, I have a whole nother that's a whole nother opinion when it comes to that. So I don't know if we're going into that direction, but I'll hold my thoughts for a moment. But I just wanted to address your question before we go too far, Pastor Ross.
Yeah, I think we can definitely go where we want to go, and so I just wonder: are we perpetually frustrated, or do we? Is it a perpetual frustration, or do we can we ever claim victory? I mean, is what we do, is it always based on how somebody else treats us or what they think about us? I mean, or are we just perpetually in this cycle of just always being targets and
I think one of the questions, good evening, guys. Apologize, I work in the evenings now and I'm rushing home to change and all that stuff. But I wanted to, before I get to that question, I do want to address that. One of the comments that Tori made made me think Black people have been dying at a much higher rate of COVID than other populations, not just getting it and getting sick. We've been dying at a higher rate than other people for COVID. And I think that was one of the reasons that they're pushing the vaccine to our community, because we were dying of it at a higher rate than any other population. I think us and Native Americans were catching it, not catching it and feeling bad for a few days and then going back to work. No, we were catching it and dying. So the second part of it is that second part of that, in addressing your conversation, Pastor Rawls, that we are going to put one foot in front of the other. We're gonna, and I think that's what Jamie was talking about. We're gonna keep celebrating our wins and keep pushing. It doesn't mean that we got everything. It doesn't mean that we will. We said, the song says, "Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome one day." We're gonna keep logging these victories. We're gonna keep knocking down devil after devil after devil until we get to that point where we have conquered everybody and conquered everything. There's a line in in a few months. One of the lines that Sophia said to Sealy, "You better not miss the head down and pray for heaven later." You know, we there is a certain element of our population as Black people that say that, you know, we'll get our reward in heaven. So it's okay that we go through trials and tribulations and are shot down and killed and stomped on and sentenced and all this other kind of stuff. It's okay because God's going to reward us when we get to heaven. No, I want some heaven on earth. So we can't wait until that final victory. And I do the air quotes, final victory, to keep fighting and to make progress and to say this is what we want done. That's one thing that I admire. What
heaven will be on earth.
We want to talking about how we these are the 5 demands we want. Here's the timeline we want to get these things. That's the kind of conversation we need to be having now as a people now. These are the things that we want, particularly not going strictly to the Democratic Party, to the Democrats and the Republicans, and say these are the things that we want. The person that's going to act on these things will get our support. Until we can do that and saying these are the things we want, then we're not going to get anywhere. The Democrats can't win without Republicans wish that, so they're doing everything in their power to tell us not to vote anyway, because I don't count on for them. It's a lot of stuff going on. I'm breaking up a lot. I'm sorry, y'all. I'll try to log back on. Hopefully, I heard something.
Yeah. So do you really have power if your whole existence is spent asking for telling somebody what you want them to give you, and you agreeing to that? You know, you can have my support if you give me. Do you ever really have power if you're dependent on somebody else to give you?
No. The truth is, no, you don't. You have to have power to demand something and get it. So I won't think you're powerless.
I'm sorry. Can I just cut in? What defines power? Money. In this country, we live in a capitalist place, a capitalist country or nation. So what Black people have money? Like we don't have any wealth really at all. Like we spent time within this last year doing this podcast talking about how we create generational wealth and the lack thereof in the Black community. So I'm a firm believer that without money you absolutely have no power. So no, I mean that's a very simple answer, is that we don't have any power. We don't have any assets. We don't have any money to create power. There's only 2 things that this country understands, and that's the loss of money and the loss of life. So, and we don't really have the ability to enact either one of those. So,
why do you think so? You don't have,
well, one, because we don't have money, and we have been this system because of systematic racism or systemic racism. We Black people, Black Indigenous people of color in this country, this system has been designed to keep us as second-rate citizens, to ensure that we don't ever get the money or power, which is one and the same that we should have. Which is why they give us, similar to what Tori was saying earlier, they give us little pieces here and there to pacify us or as a people, but we won't ever really see to fruition really what we're looking for, which is what we deserve, which is to be not equal with white Americans in this country, but what's the word I'm looking for? Equitable with white people in this country, to have equity, to be equitable, like, because equal, no, I don't agree that everybody is equal. Everybody is not equal. We're all different. We all have different talents. We all have different skills. We all have different abilities. We all look different. One of y'all on here can take off and run a 50-yard dash, and Jay is just gonna jog that thing because I know that I'm not able to do that. So we're not equal, but I should be able to, if I want to try to run a 50-yard dash, I should be able to do that with Willie Earl, even though I might not be able to equally do it with you, but I should have the equitable institution to say I want to at least give it a shot. We don't have that in this country. We don't have that. So it's gonna be a consistent fight, uphill battle for us to try to get to that place. But at this moment, if we're asking about power in the Black and African American community, culture, race, the answer is simply no, because we don't have any money. We don't have anything to create power with. People with money have power, and most Black people don't have money. We don't have the kind of money that we need to have power.
We do have voting power.
Okay, so I, as a woman who has participated in this political structure in our country, and who believes, I do believe that voting is a very powerful tool to use in order to be a part of this nation and try to be a part of the political realm of things, which actually controls our lives. But voting power really is only impactful locally, really. It's really only impactful locally, which is where our lives seem to change the most at the local level. But that's not. Are you?
No, my daughter was speaking to me.
That's not the kind of power that's going to make the difference that we need. Because the only way that we're going to see a real true difference with voting and in our with our elected officials is if we actually get someone in office, preferably a person of color, who has a true Black agenda, who's not afraid to go against the powers that be or the establishment and say, listen, here is the Black agenda. This is what I want to do for Black America, because we see all these other organizations, people coming after us with their issues, and they continue to move forward in their quest for equitable, to be equitable in this country, but we always continue to be overlooked. No, Shira, we don't see or hear you. I don't see you anyway. But
I think the only reason why I have my family, 4/5 of my family, 4 of the 5 people under my roof, the only one that's not vaccinated is my 10-year-old, because they can't get it, is because I voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I believe the only reason that next month we're going to be getting $300 per child for a few, I don't know how long it's going to last. That's not because I voted locally. It's because I voted for Joe Biden in November. There's a lot of other things that are going to come our way for those that voted correctly with the voters' rights, the Senate Bill 1. I mean, the one for the People Act. Those things are going to come forward because we voted nationally and for our senators and stuff like that. Voting goes way beyond local control. So it is important, but I disagree with that. That the biggest difference is going to be vote locally.
I want to interject a few points. Number one, the first one is if we talk about voting, the largest impact that we're always going to have is local, because even what happens is even like right now, we're seeing federal gun control laws. Like in Missouri, they have passed a bill now that in Missouri they don't have to adhere to federal gun control laws. Even when Obama was president and the stimulus was handed down, red states like South Carolina, even Florida with Medicaid expansion, when they refuse to buy into those particular things, it doesn't matter what the federal government actually did if a state or local government refuses to buy into it. Additionally, but when we think about voting power, it's still bigger than just that actual vote. We do have equal power every state to vote. That in that ballot box, that's the one place that everybody has the equal power. The issue is, as a collective, we need to leverage our power together. We keep voting and then sitting back and waiting for other people to make decisions about us and telling them we're gonna shove this down your damn throat. So yeah, Biden did some nice things, but the one thing that still stands out, we are the voting bloc that got him there. And the fact that the things that are related to us specifically as Black people is, well, let's do a study and then we'll get to it down the road. But many of his executive orders have immediate actions that we can see for a specific people, of a specific group. And I'm one thing that I am, and I had to come to that evolution and the realization that if we don't have, whoever it is that does not have the ability to understand that it starts with Black, and I mean Black, the color of our skin, they still not fully for us. We can still walk at your bubble gum and say we got some gains that we do have, that Biden was elected. But if we're not mindful and don't understand that now is a particular time that there needs to be a level of accountability for Black people specifically. The fact that there is such a knee-jerk reaction every time that you want to lead with race, although any study or everything that you come up with shows that race is the primary factor, it's a problem. The fact that literally there are people that are getting in debates and ready to kill each other by stating that they should treat us in a particular manner. I don't mean to be funny, and I know that I'm a bit cocky, but this United States of this America, this is ours. It doesn't matter that we were bought against our will. All of it was built on our backs. And the fact that we are still fighting to have things that are literally just our due and that we're entitled for, we can't keep saying, well, okay, well, I'm glad that this happened and that happened. We need to be steering the actual narrative. The way that we get our infrastructure and the way that we get our capital is, number one, start by each other. One of the things that we're having, where we are starting to have wins, not just gains, but wins. We are going to lose any of the gains that we have because literally the people who are not at the table that should be are us. And I don't mean Black people that already do movement work, and I don't mean older Black people. I mean Black people that are like my age or younger, like that 45 age group and younger. They're the most impacted by everything, but literally we can't get us and convince us to do business together. We can't get us to stand and show up together. Even when I turned my camera off and my video and my mic off, it was somebody who went to a school board meeting that I just asked them to go to because they're trying to unseat one of our Black elected officials. And for her, it was the level of shock at the entitlement of the white people that were there with their signs spewing stuff that has been shown to be clearly incorrect. Even as she watched a white woman get up there and say she's not racist because she got a mixed child. White women slept with our Black men throughout history. Even then, when that didn't work, she do what white women do. They weaponize their tears. And as soon as a white woman says something, we jump because we want to see that damsel in distress and jump to their aid. But then when it's a Black woman, we do the exact opposite. All of that stuff is great. There's still, and y'all know me, I call out white people all day long. I created the terminology white people.
Call them out.
Is there a balance that we realize that they still can only do what we allow, and our refusal to hold them accountable is still a part of the problem.
Yeah, I also would like to interject that I do believe we have more power than we believe we have, and as Shanae said, our power will be waged when we come together and unify. We are the labor force. We are the workforce. We literally drive the profits in this country. We are the reason why people are becoming billionaires, and we do have money and we do spend it. And so the narrative, the thought, or the idea that we are powerless, I feel, is not one that's beneficial to us, because we have to recognize that we have a whole lot of power. And the other thing, Pastor Ron, I feel like, ain't nothing wrong with wanting to be in a reciprocal relationship, to say, hey, why would I give you my support if you're not going to care about my issues? I think we should want to be in reciprocal relationships.
And so let me ask the question. I wanted to, might be kind of old now, but I want to go back at it, talking about the power piece. Was that power that, and that's not the only community we've had other communities that really thrive, but was that power or an anomaly that happened in the 1920s and before in Tulsa. What was that power, and is that like something that's not doable today?
I think I think that was the beginning of a power structure, because if we could have had places like that, we could have created our own GDP, or we could have created things to join the GDP, gross domestic products. You know, we could have had a currency within our communities. We would the dollar would have been circulating within our communities. You know, everybody knows the black dollar doesn't circulate in our community that long now, but during that time, I think that was the beginning of a power structure, and the devil knows that. That's one of the reasons why they took it out.
But we had one before then. So literally, there was a time we were even more successful than Tulsa, and that was literally after Reconstruction. But what happened is, and
what happened to that place?
But even what happens is, when we start to attain power, we want to be so damn forgiving. That's what happens. We're not going to do them like they do us. We're not going to wage war. We're not going to be violent. And so because we take on that meek and meager persona, they come and take our stuff by force. So one of the other things that they do as well is that's another reason you still have, even when you don't believe in the political structure, you got to understand that some things are social engineering. And so that's the reason that you got to be at the table when it relates to politics. I can always revert back to Gainesville. The black side of town is the side of town that has no resources. Well, one of the things that gives it resources is I-75. By design, by the people and political power, they decided to run that freeway down where it is by Archer Road instead of through Waldo Road where it was supposed to be initially. And so what happens with us when we start to obtain things, even when it's arts and culture, because we are the culture, we start paying attention to that particular stuff. We're so busy securing the bag that we're not realizing that they're setting up things in order to make us fall. They're setting up things in order to snatch it right from under us. On top of not only are they social engineering it, but then they're willing. We don't ever want to talk about white violence, but that's the problem in this country. It ain't black on black crime, it's white violence. They will come and take everything by gunpoint, by knife point, by any means necessary. And they didn't just do it to us now as black people. They did it to indigenous people, which a lot of them are black people, and Native Americans. And that's how we keep. There are multiple times throughout history when we built this infrastructure that we needed, and we allowed, and I'm going to say that, for them to come in and take it because of our deal. First of all, I done came to the top, so now everybody else is not my issue. We only as strong as the weakest link. And I'm going to turn the other cheek and just look the other way because violence is not the answer. And while I don't think that's where we start, we need to be prepared for whatever it is. That was the reason that if you ever notice when something happens, what's the first thing that white people do? They go get their guns. It's the first thing. Literally, the reason that Virginia and states like that is open carry is to intimidate us. The reason we got slave patrols, it was to intimidate us. Literally, if you look at all of the founding of this country, it was done on the premise of violence. Even too, we don't hear in our history about slave revolts and things like that because they want to paint us as the meek ones that are not willing to actually go to war. And then they've programmed us that the way that we go to war is we go to war with each other. Oh, I'm fighting for my respect. How is it that you fighting and killing each other in your neighborhood with respect? And ain't nobody got money or power, but you're not willing to fight for your respect with the people who got power to change your situation. And that's what we got to look at. Those aren't just the only ones. There were really many times that we as a people made it and were on top, and those things were taken from us.
So I'm glad you used the word allow, because I think that's the root of it. It's not so much that this is not something that can't be attained, because we've seen, like Tori said, the beginnings. We've seen. I mean, this is, you're talking about 25 years after slavery, 30 years after slavery, this thing starts building. And but it's the allowing. So it's not that it can't happen, it's we're allowing because of the condition of the mind, the thinking that violence is out the question, even turn it on our people when we even talk about violence being on the table. And I'm going to bring up something it's going to sound crazy, but I promise you it's a connection. I think sometimes the bigger fight is trying to wrestle the demon within. because we see others as the one. We see others as the one that we have to wrestle to control and get. But I think so many of our efforts, they get knocked to the side and get derailed because of stuff that's within. That sometimes we're gonna have to have some when I was in my frat, we call them brotherhood sessions, but we're gonna have to have some real dealings. And I know I see Shanae doing it all the time with each other. And I'm gonna say this, and y'all gonna think I'm crazy, but just don't throw stones yet. And so you got a lot of people, even in media, that kind of control the way people think and control narratives. And some of them try to seem so pro this and so pro that, but in reality, like Tori said, the different sides of the same coin. Just one talking this way and one talking that way. I see a brother, and again, don't go off on me yet. Just think about what I'm saying. I see a brother and this brother Kwame Brown that they rattled. I see him because you got Boyce Watkins and you got, let's say, Roland Martin. So they seem totally opposite. But I think both of them want to have control and want to be on the inside. And I think you have somebody come in like this fella, Kwame Brown, that, not that he's some great theologian or great this doctor and like that, but the kind of stuff that he's saying, the real stuff that he's saying, that some people might not like. You ain't gonna like everything somebody says, but it is shaking up traditional thought. It's shaking up some real traditional thought, and there is a huge movement behind the stuff that this brother is saying. And folk that thought they had a lockdown on controlling folk, like Boyce, who a lot of us always want to comment. He's real disrespectful. I don't even want to deal with most of y'all Negroes. It's just the 10% of the smart ones that I want to deal with, and we just sit and kind of just allow people to control, when we got to get back to some real basic stuff that they started a long time ago, because we got some people that's trying to be in power that ain't helping us get there without trying to lift themselves up. And so I think we're gonna have to do some real wrestling from within, to really get back to that thing that they were starting in 19 teens. And Shanae says, what happened with, okay, so, and what happened is not really that important, but this is a brother. He was actually supposed to be coming to the University of Florida, but he got drafted, and they dogged him. They treat him like dirt, and then you have these NBA players that's that get in the media, and they kind of forget where they come from, and they just they get real personal with this stuff, and they say stuff that white folk can't say, and they drag us and treat us. White folk know not to even say that kind of stuff. But but they use people like, and so is a guy named Matt Barnes, a former player, and what's George Floyd's, the guy that connected to George Floyd, the NBA player, huh?
Derek Chauvin.
No, the black dude that's supposed to look like his brothers, look like him. I forgot his name, but it's an
Kevin
NBA.
Garnett. Kevin Garnett.
It's God, dog, don't worry. Stack. Stackhouse. No, not Stackhouse. But don't worry about the name. But he was like at the forefront of the whole George Floyd thing. Him and George Floyd knew each other. People they like brothers, look like brothers. And Stephen Jackson, that's who it is. Stephen Jackson. Yeah. And so even they've been dogging Kwame for years. And so they was on their show and they just dogged him in front of this a white woman, the LA Lakers, and they just like, did he trash? He did, see that? I mean, they take it to almost like Stephen A. Smith. You get too crazy with this stuff now. You're getting too much, like they using you to really bash our people. And so this brother had enough. And so he came out and he came out fine with all citizens because he just been quiet and they've been killing him. And he came out and started calling out everything, all the stuff they did, and how white folk, literally use them to do what they can't do, and how they try to be like these gatekeepers, who get to come in and who don't get to come in. And this brother got a huge, you just type his name right now, he got a huge group of regular black folk that has jumped and that's hanging on every word. And it's not because of who he is, it's because of what he's saying.
What he's saying. Yeah.
It's what he's saying, that now you got this massive move of people that's listening to what he's saying because it's real, because he calling out all the folk that thought that they were gatekeepers. And I think that there's people that try to be gatekeepers, and when they get to whatever these tables are, now they got that. Yeah, we can let this one in, this one all right, and we can't let. And both of some of them on masters, some of them say yes, a master, and the other one saying black power. But all of them have become gatekeepers. And I think to get back to that stuff that Tori say, that's what we were starting. And they saw what was about to happen. I think if we did it before, we can do it again. But we're gonna have to deal with giving these gatekeepers so much, and Kwame's ripping them down. He's after Stephen A. Smith. I
just wrote a book about it, so that's actually one of some of the
Stephen Smith or Coon anyway.
Yeah. But some of it is a part of the book. I call it allegiances. So one of the things that I discuss in my book is these allegiances, and we, especially us, like to form allegiances with people that we think have perceived power. And then we have people that should be quote unquote power that won't leverage it because they're so busy trying to hold on to their power. They're not doing the work of the needs of the people, which means they really don't have power. Because if you got power, you're able to use whatever your role is, position is, to help move our people forward. But we do that. So I don't know about y'all, but one of the reasons I've been able to be effective is because for the longest time I didn't say anything, and I was able to watch who were the people. Like I very boldly, the person that's over at NAACP here, I call out all the time because she ain't for us. She's for her. And it's those things. So these people that should be in roles in order to move the work forward, or that should be able to help to call these things out. But they won't because they're too busy trying to hold on to whatever it is that they have. That happens that in companies, that happens in schools, that happens in most organizations where I get that people do that all the time because I'm not the one who's always the talking one. I'm not the one who talks about my particular titles and things like that. And I started that because I wanted people who wanted to hear what I had to say, not realizing how they think that I could benefit them or what power they think I had. You will find out very quickly that it's a lot of us that's not for us. They're about what they can actually obtain. When you said names like Roland Martin, that was one of the reasons. There's things that I like about him, but one of the things I didn't like is that he dragged President Obama, but he didn't drag anyone before him after him. I believe in keeping the same energy. So if you're going to drag somebody, you drag all of them. How is it I can hear rats piss on cotton with every other person that's in a position of power? But this one, you dragged them every chance that you got. But so many people do that, or they drag people that don't have the same thought process. Like when they came for Dr. Umar Johnson, it's not for me to agree with everything that Dr. Johnson says, but why is it that we always go the extra step to demean or tear us down and try to keep us from getting in? I've worked in the corporate world. It was always black people that gave me a harder time with trying to go to the next level than it was white people.
Let's internalize. Let's talk about it. Let's internalize. That is stuff that we were raised, and we're continuing to fight against that narrative that the white man's ice is colder, that his education, his school, these PWIs are better, the black schools are all party schools. We don't trust each other, and that's just hundreds and hundreds of years of black hating, black self-hate that we've been indoctrinated with, and we're just doing our best to get rid of that. We don't look at we see one cookie there and we fight to death for that little scrap of cookie instead of working together and saying, you know what, that person over there got thousands of cookies. Why are we fighting over this one cookie? What do we need to do to counter what, you know what I'm saying? That's something that we need to work together on and undo, acknowledge that trauma, and acknowledge the problems that came because of that trauma, and then move forward.
Do we have to move forward as a group, or can we just go on our own? Do we have to move forward as a group?
we do have to move forward as a group. There's no group that ever moved forward. I mean, they got the things that they wanted without working together. The women got the right to vote 100 years ago, not because every woman did their own thing. They worked together and it happened. So there were probably women that said, forget the suffragette stuff. I don't need to vote. I just trust my husband to vote for me. But the majority of women stood up and said, no, enough is enough. We need the right to vote. A lot of them say, how y'all going to give the black men the right to vote over white women? That's true too. We can acknowledge that part. With Susan B. Anthony and all them other jokers that were racist too. But they didn't wait. They fought and they did and they marched and all this other kind of stuff to get the right to vote. They didn't go by themselves. So if we think we can do everything by myself, I don't need y'all. Y'all don't need me. We'll come to the same direction without working together. We fooling ourselves. It's not going to happen.
Do you think that there are people? I think that there are. I mean, because we do a lot of we sound real French sometimes, but there are a lot of everybody don't feel like we feel. There are black people that have accomplishments and have wealth and have assets and that are really moving forward in life and not stuck on the struggle of the whole.
Well,
they're leaving legacies for their families.
I think that's a factor in it. There's some black capitalists who only want to make a way for themselves. But then we also have black people who have a strong affinity for white folks and want white folks to be included in everything. And some, a lot of black folks don't want white folks included in nothing. Then you also have the black people who are non-binary, who have different sexual orientations or different identifications, and some other black people who are not tolerant of that at all and don't want to see them people be, in their movements or in when they think of a liberated world, they don't include the LGBTQ or the non-gender binary people in there.
What's binary?
Binary is two, like male and female, either one or the other. And non-gender binary are people who don't conform to the binary, thinking that you have to fit into a box like that.
Can you?
They gave it a name. Oh, yeah, we hear you, Shanae.
Okay, I don't know why my camera's not working. Okay, I don't know why my camera's not working. But then I wanted to piggyback off of what Earl and Shira actually said. That's also part of the problem. When you're asking, well, there's people that don't feel like us, they're leaving a legacy. Well, your chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So if you're leaving a legacy for yours, but the people within your community either can't patronize your business or it can't cycle throughout your community, then you've left nothing. So I think what my frustration is with a lot of us, we think that the legacy is money. A legacy is bigger than that. And white people, they have definitely figured that part out. That's the reason they don't want things like critical race theory to be taught. That's the reason when they talk about Thanksgiving and how it happened and how we took over this country, because they wanted to be this positive legacy that was left, even though we know that they robbed, stole, raped, and killed to get everything. That's not the story that's actually being told. This whole I'm worried about me and mine and not you and yours is actually a part of the problem. Also, this white is right mindset that many of us have. It's some of us that get in positions of power and then they still let white people give them advice on how to govern. Well, why are you going to let white people tell you how to govern when the manner in which they know how to govern is that they keep and maintain power? I'll go with another personal story. And one of the big things we did is we have our first predominantly black school board, which is 3 black women out of the 5. We are the ones that got them elected and got them where they are. It was 5 black people that got together, developed a plan, developed a reorganizational structure, developed a community engagement plan. We did the theory, we did the work. 3 of these people actually have doctoral degrees. One has a master's degree and the other's working on their doctoral degree, and me who has a bachelor's. We rolled out a plan to each one of these people individually, and they virtually ignored us. They put a superintendent in there who we stated not to put in there. and this is the way that you move. Now the superintendent is moving like the previous person, and then now going back to do the exact same reorganization plan that we gave them 9 months ago. Me being who I am, because I don't throw rocks and hide my hand, I reach out to each one of them and let them know, hey, I'm about to blow this out the water. Y'all need to rectify it for two things. This reorganization plan is necessary in order to attain equity for Black people. So Black people should be at the forefront. But number two, that's our reorganization plan. And somebody gonna tell me, well, oh, she hired a superintendent coach, which means they paid the money. That superintendent coach gave them the same plan that we gave you for free 9 months ago, knowing that we are the people that even got y'all to the particular role. There's a problem in that. And so we need to also be mindful about calling our people to the carpet and making them accountable about how they do stuff, because they're a part of the problem. It don't benefit anybody to get wealth, power, or anything else if they're not going to leverage it for the people.
Amen.
I have a comment. Do y'all realize that over the past, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, that everything has been given a title or a name, and each time they name something, it separates people? For instance, Shanae just brought up briefly the critical race theory, which basically is just saying to tell the truth about what happened in history, when we were already telling the truth about what happened in history. When we were children, we learned that, Black people built the pyramids, and there were Black people enslaved and things of that nature. And there were Black people that a Black man created the red light and this, that, and the third, Benjamin Banneker, all of these great Black people. But now there's something called critical race theory, where they want to stop teaching about what they did. The fork-tongued devil wants to use the other side of his tongue. And Shira just said something about binary. There's a title for everything, and everything is making it where everybody is separated. The more they separate everybody, there's always going to be confusion. That's why we as Hebrew Israelites say this is Mystery Babylon. Babylon means confusion. This place is confusion. And we sit here every month and we talk about the same things in a different light, but it's all about the same confusion. They're creating confusion. We know who the enemy is. And we just keep sitting here looking at them confusing us.
Yeah.
I yield.
I think I did learn about Benjamin Banneker in school, but that might be as far as my Black education went. So I have to respect.
Well, I went to an all-Black school, and
I did not.
we had Black History Month all year round.
Yeah, we had Black History.
That's not our story.
I said yeah, that's me. Yeah,
you said we in your initial comment. You said they're changing what we learned, and we didn't learn that.
Okay, well, I wasn't the only one in my school.
Yeah, but most people didn't grow up in a position that you grew up in, especially if you live in the South. There was most of the schools that I attended, except for one that was middle school, were predominantly white.
Okay, well, when you went to college, did you learn about Black people who did things?
I didn't go to the traditional college. I ended up getting married very young, so I didn't go to college until I was 20 years old. And when I did, it wasn't a traditional 4-year institution. So everything that I learned about Black people and our contribution to this world and to society and culture, most of it, my daddy didn't teach me, which my dad, was very influential in a lot of that. But I was self-taught. I picked up a book and I read myself. I went and found people that knew more than I knew, and they taught me, but I didn't learn any of that in grade school, and that's where it should be taught. And if at the bare minimum, it should be taught in middle school.
My point, Jamie, wasn't about the Black people who made accomplishments. My point was they're trying to hide their hand, like Shanae just eloquently throw a rock and hide your hand. That was my point.
I understood what you were trying to say. I was just wanting to clarify that we didn't learn that stuff, because that was a part of the comment that you made, and I didn't learn a lot of that in school. I don't know really what the intention is, and I'm always skeptical when new things do come, because then I always try to figure out what the purpose is and what will it actually teach and what will the influence be. But when it comes to CRT, excuse me, or critical race theory, I think it's imperative that we do teach it in schools, because I think that a lot of white people don't want it in schools because they want to cover up what really is the actual reality. And a lot of schools, especially here in St. Johns County, they don't teach about anything. I mean, the only time that we do talk about the contributions or anything that is relatively that speaks about the way Black people came to this country, the indigenous people that were already here, or anything, is possibly in Black History Month. And it's very
okay.
high.
Yeah, I wasn't saying don't teach critical race theory. I'm pointing out the fact that they're giving everything a title. You may have not gone to a Black school or some of you may have not learned certain things as children about our people, but on a majority in the United States, Black history was being taught. We have a Black History Month, so we did learn about slaves. So and they didn't really. The only name they gave it was.
About slaves.
I want to interject.
About slaves.
I want to interject.
Dr. Martin Luther King
was not taught.
I want to interject.
You know what?
I respectfully disagree on that one. Yes.
Okay.
What we did learn about Black people in schools was.
What I'm saying is they're trying to get rid of you teaching it. They're trying to get rid of you teaching it.
They're trying to get rid of you teaching. You think critical race theory will rid the schools of teaching?
No.
Okay.
Like in Texas, they're trying to get rid of you teaching about slavery, period.
Okay, yes. About
right. That's what I'm saying. I'm with you. You may not have learned about certain things. Our children do need to learn about that. That's my point. But they're trying to hide their hand. That was my point.
I want to interject.
Trying to get my point out. I'm sorry.
No worries. So I want to interject. I think where the disconnect, and the reason that I know this so clearly is because I am from Florida, but my kids were primarily educated in Atlanta. So in Atlanta, to them, Black history is American history, which it really is. So from K all the way through 12, every single lesson that they got is immersed. If they in math, they're learning about math with Black mathematicians. If they're in science, they're learning about Black scientists. If they're in art, they're learning about Black artists. In Florida, in Gainesville, Florida, they don't do that. In Florida, when you look at the actual statutes, because they always say, because even with Alachua County, there's that's called the letter of the law and the essence of the law. In order for a school district to get an exemplary status, they have to teach Black history. So when you go look at the standards, I use Reconstruction because I sat down with the school district with this as a part of Black History Task Force trying to get Black history immersed in the schools. When they teach about Reconstruction, they don't teach in Reconstruction about like Hiram Revels and the success of Black people. They teach about like Andrew Johnson. They teach about a bunch of white people. And so we got to understand that history is extremely whitewashed, even when it's taught. Even the fact that we're saying that we have a Black History Month, there's no way all of the immense history that Black people you can actually even teach in a Black History Month, because literally Black history is American history. This entire country is ours, and it's one of the reasons that I'm cocky. But what happens is most people don't know that. It took my son, who is now 21, to point out to me, because we moved back here his senior year. He said, "Mom, I'm so glad that we went to school in Georgia and we learned about our people there." He said, because the way they teach history here, all you know about Black people is they either went to jail or they died. He said, "I don't want to go to jail and I don't want to die." And so when my son is able to tell people about who Stokely Carmichael is or who Fred Hampton is or the World Bank or Tulsa Massacre, it's literally because of what he learned in Georgia. We learned about reading like magazines like The Root and things that are blackety black. When he tells those things to people here in Gainesville and Marion County, it's mind-boggling to them because that's not the history that they're being fed. And y'all know that. We didn't learn that even Christopher Columbus came over here and stole some land that was already discovered. It was one of those frilly things. The Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Marie, they made songs. Everything was happy-go-lucky. When we were taught about the Trail of Tears here, because the way it's whitewashed, it wasn't that Indians were slaughtered and that we took all of their particular land with Manifest Destiny. So but critical race theory has been around for 40 years, but it's a theory that's taught in college. So I want to point out to people that critical race theory never has to be taught in our educational system because it's a theory and a body of knowledge. This is something that was politicized. That's what this is about. This is a political ploy for power. And the reason that's what it is because it gives talking points to white people that keeps us distracted. We don't need critical, and the theory itself is good because it looks at systems, because racism is a system. But I want us to understand how they weaponize language. So everybody's so busy tearing apart critical race theory about whether we should have it or not. And that's the point that Tori was making. What he's stating is we don't need critical race theory. What we need is to still be real and making people learn what it is that we have to learn. We don't have to give it a title. And we got to realize that even Jamie, like for you, it's things that you learned in adulthood. Even though I didn't learn a lot of Black history in school per se, I was a McNaught achiever. We learned it there. I was in pre-collegiate. We learned it throughout the school year. So even as we're village building and we having these organizations, we can be deliberate about ensuring that our people learn our particular history and looking at racism as a system and how we can actually impact that system. We got to stop trying to maneuver in their way of doing things because their way of doing things is always where they maintain power. Even if they come to the table and say we're going to do something collaborative under interest conversion, the way that people in power do it is they get whatever their interest is that's met and then they exit the table. And then we're left, if we get anything at all, then it scraps. So we got to realize that we need to be the ones to set the table.
Well, let me add on to that. CRT, critical race theory, is looking at all of our systems that are in place right now in America, from the housing to banking to the hospitals to education to criminal justice to policing, and looking at how those things, those policies came into play, who put them in play, and how they benefit some and hurt others. That's it. From beginning to end. It's not a class that they're teaching, and the reason why those conservative white folks like Ron DeSantis and all them are running around holding it up as a flag to distract those people that can't complain about what Joe Biden's doing, the job he's doing with the Democrats. They can't complain about that Trump won anymore without looking crazy. So they're shifting and trying to do what they need to do to get themselves hyped up for 2022. And I think that's one of the things that we're looking at. I'll say this again about what Jamie said. I'm born and raised in St. Augustine, Florida. I learned about the children foot soldiers in St. Augustine, Florida as a grown man. I learned about Dr. King getting sitting in the back of a police car with a dog in the back of his car as a grown man. I learned about Andrew Jackson leading Andrew Young leading the march downtown from what was it? That was a few weeks, I think 2 weeks before the Civil Rights Act was signed. There was a race riot downtown in St. Augustine, Florida. I did not know any of that stuff. I didn't know that Dr. King preached in my hometown church, Bethel Missionary Baptist Church on 22 Riberia Street. I didn't know that Dr. King preached in St. Paul, where Pastor Ross was. I didn't know none of that stuff. We were not told our own history. We had to take Florida history, but they kept all that stuff away from us. We did hear that that we didn't know Dr. King had to sleep in people's houses because he was kicked out of hotels. He was trespassing for every single hotel. We learn none of that stuff. So, but PRT is not about teaching Black history. It's about looking at the system that said that we're going to do everything in our power to not to make sure white people come out on top, and so that's really what that comes from.
So, do we actually? I'm going back to Shanae's word, allow. Do we actually allow them power over? I'm trying to figure out. We keep calling it critical race theory, but it's truth. And just the fact that they can take that word truth out of our mouth and we call it something that now you can debate. I mean, all you're saying is can't teach the truth. None of the stuff is debated that it's a lie. This is what happened. And when we get pulled out of a real simple word into a word that can be debated, is truth. And are we still allowing people to control the narrative and allowing them to have the power?
We allow them to have the power when we choose not to run for school board, when we choose not to run for office, when we choose not to go to these school board meetings and get on these boards to talk about the curriculum. Those are the ways that we allow these things to continue.
But what if I run for school board, but I still let them control my words? Because this, to me, it's a stupid conversation. They get me to say something kind of like when people were saying like defund the police. Well, we don't like that word, so say it different. You when you give people the power to even get to, I mean, if we can't have nothing else, we can't have our own words. You know, when I see people, like when we get around certain people, you know, we know how to code switch and whatnot. But why? Why do I have to code switch? Why can't I just be me? And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I can't. If we continue to succumb to their world, I don't know how we could ever have what we want when we're constantly trying to fit in to what's acceptable in someone else's world. I didn't see that when I looked at that documentary, and I watched it before, but now we've been flooded with it. You know, I saw people doing their thing.
Yep.
But we just keep buying into trying to be accepted, our language and everything else, trying to be accepted by people that could care less about us.
What documentary?
The Tulsa massacre.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I always talk about that. That's respectability, and you know I don't subscribe to respectability because to me that's us trying to appeal to the morals of people who don't have morals. And that's
Correct.
what that is. So that's why we think that code switching is necessary. That's the reason that we wear our hair a particular way, we dress a certain kind of way to be accepted. But I want to be even clear with us that we have subscribed to it so much that we're worse than the people that we say they're oppressors. That's the reason we got into this whole debate about whether you should wear bonnets outside. Or as many of us that subscribe to it, many people that I see, even when black people wear women with their natural hair, I see more black men and black women that have an issue with it than anyone else. It is us, and it's always that's what it is. When you know the people are not going to say that you fit in, you know, basically like Master not going to like that. I will tell people one of the things that I do is I literally cuss, and I don't even cuss that much in real life because I want people to know you're not.
Hey, hold on. Let me back up for a second. Go ahead, say it again.
I don't even cuss that much in real life. But I would get on this little blue app and cut us. And it is purposeful because people want to, number one, tone police you and tell you if you are upset, to tell you how you should convey if you're upset, angry. That's why we get called angry black woman. That's the reason that we're a black man. You know, that's the reason that two people don't feel confident going to speak up at these particular meetings because it's been programmed and been embedded that you don't have the ability to do so because you don't say things the right way. You don't say things the way that is acceptable. Right. I think we need to number one start in our own communities with us because I'll be honest, y'all know my other term, uppity Negroes are the ones that I have the biggest problem with, trying to tell us how we should do things and how we should have a particular message. And that's part of the problem. So we got people where we should be unified together, telling it down and say, I'm refusing to engage in the message because I don't like how you gave the message. Then it gives power to them to not buy into the messaging in order to create change. We need to be leaning into how we communicate because it's interesting that our stuff is never acceptable until white people say it's acceptable. Whether it's braiding our hair, whether it's slang or any of that stuff, we tear each other down and it doesn't become acceptable. Now in the age of TikTok, so many things that we've been doing for years, now it's so acceptable because white people love it because it's on TikTok.
Way past your bedtime.
Con.
Yeah, that's and so I think a message that we want to try to send to people that might watch this video is that we got to be true to ourselves. You know, we got to. I was watching this documentary called "How on the Whole," and
good.
And we got to be true to ourselves. We got to be true to our culture. We got to value who we are and stop having another eye on somebody else and somebody else's culture. And we really have to value who we are and what we bring to the table, and not allow the gatekeepers to pressure us into bend into a system that's not going to ever like us anyway. If you can use the system, you use it, but you don't bow to the system. You use it for your good and get what you need to get out of it, like squeezing a lemon. I'm gonna squeeze you, and I'm gonna get what I need to get out you, and then add my little bit to it, and we're gonna make this thing work. But I can't yield to you. You don't control how I maneuver, and I think we got to figure out, how to have our people comfortable in our own skin and being ourselves, and then look at models. Like Tori said, that Tori reality wasn't our reality. What they were taught and what we were taught were two, and it ain't Georgia, that's Atlanta, and because Savannah ain't like that, but look, you use those models, and then when we're able to come into a place to where we've used this thing that we said had power voting, use that to try to be those models so we can teach generations, to love ourselves and to embrace ourselves and to and to be ourselves. But as long as we keep we ignore the stuff that's working, and we keep trying to be something that don't like us anyway, I think we're gonna constantly struggle. But there has been models around this country to where people really, and I don't think right now, I don't think they could pull another one. I don't think they could pull another one. Another Tulsa massacre. I think they'll find out that America will get massacred. They couldn't pull. We might have some that might be afraid, but it's enough for us that said, no, you ain't gonna pull that. And then just imagine if we had that kind of mindset and start establishing communities like that throughout the country. They ain't got the power to pull that. They all mouth. They ain't got the power to pull that again.
Well, let me say this real quick. I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm gonna say this really, really fast. Tulsa wasn't planes and shooting and all that stuff wasn't the way that Dunbar and other Black communities got decimated. Integration is what happened to our communities. We stopped supporting ourselves and started going to Woolworth instead of going to Mr. Jenkins' place. And those other businesses sold out or gave their property up, but their kids didn't want to keep the business going after their mama died. Those kind of things, those pressing, those laundromats, those restaurants, those hotels, all those other things that nobody dropped the bomb on our Black communities like they did Tulsa, but they went away because we went away and said we want to do our own thing. And Dr. King said, one of the things he said, he's starting to realize that he was leading our people into a burning building, integrating us into a burning building. We were already self-sufficient, independent, all that stuff, but we decided to give that up for the white man's cooler ice.
Well, I think it's fair for us to be clear while we're talking about civil rights and Dr. King. And I say that every I think I've said it every single episode about the degradation of Black people and integration and how they intertwine. But I think it's fair to say that we know, and I guess most of us know, that civil rights, the initial Civil Rights Act was not about integration. That's not what Dr. King was asking for at all. That was just what they were willing to give. He just wanted to be, he was asking for equality. Wanted to be able to have access to things, not necessarily integrate our neighborhoods. That was just or integrate us as a whole. That's kind of what it came with. Like, they were only willing to do it that way. So I think we got to talk about that when we start talking about the Civil Rights Act and what transpired within all of that. Because it gets really, really deep when you start really looking at it and figuring out how it all came together in the end.
And that goes back to what Shanae said. You got to be thoughtful. Mm-hmm. When you sit in and you having these conversations, you got to be thoughtful, because you and them ain't always on the same page. They listen to your words, and how can I make them feel like they got what they wanted but still ended up with my power. And you got to be thoughtful when you got to be thinking, you got to be playing chess in this thing. And when you, and that go back to my initial, title, uh, is this progress or is it the same old tricks? And you got you got to keep your eyes open, and you start trusting too much. You're gonna find yourself. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. Any closing comments before we got 3 minutes before we close out? Any closing comments anybody wants to make? Get off the chest.
Well, I just want to read something right quick, because the title says pessimism or optimism. I'm optimistic for our people, although I have a different view because I'm in a different light right now in my life. And, we actually do what the Bible says. We actually keep the commandments of the Most High. And we just want to bring our people back to that, which was prophesied anyway. So I'm just going to read this right quick. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, which is in the Apocrypha, chapter 12, verse 10. Never trust thine enemy, for as like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped the looking glass. And thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away. Set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat. And thou, at the last, remember my words and be pricked therewith. Who will pity a charmer that is with a serpent, or any such as come nigh wild beasts? I just wanted to read that because I don't trust these people. They have not done anything to earn my trust. They stole us. They stole this land. They stole this word. And there is a recompense that is coming. All these believers that think that the Most High is not going to do what he said in the scripture, they're not really believers. They are Edom and the rest of the enemies of the Most High, it says in Psalms 83, and they will be destroyed. That's all I got to say. Kwam Yasharala.
Powerful, powerful. I guess my final piece is you got to be careful. I had a conversation. I had to go and do a funeral in St. Augustine a couple of weeks ago, and I had an opportunity. There was a pastor that kind of shared with me. He said, "Hey man, all your work wasn't in vain. I'm kind of stepping in there, and I'm picking up the mantle. We don't worry about it. I'm picking up the mantle." And he shared with me. He said that the sheriff hired him to be a liaison between them and the community. That's all I got to say. Y'all fill in the blanks.
What was your response is my question.
What you seeing right here? Because that says that he's not even clued in. He don't even realize
we got on payroll.
How he's in control. And we just got to be careful, y'all. We got to be careful. You are what you eat, and if the sheriff feeding you, Jamie, unmute yourself.
I'm in here having a whole fit, y'all. First of all, I know people be thinking that we talk. They probably think you told me about that a long time ago because I literally just commented on somebody's post just the other day about this. I can't think of his name right now.
I ain't saying no names.
No, I ain't saying no names, but I can't think of the guy's name who post I commented on. But anyway, he was talking about West Augustine, and that's where I live, so that's near and dear to me. and he was just talking about a situation similar to what Pastor Ross is, and I jumped on there saying how they hire, they'll pay you to be like the watchdog or the liaison, so to speak, for the Black community. I knew nothing about that. I knew nothing about that, but I know people probably in their mind, I know some people read it because I got some feedback on it, and they probably thought that I was talking about that situation, but I had no idea that was even the case. But
we got to be careful, and Shanae might seem cruel, but I think we got to see, we got to acknowledge the snakes that's among us. And if you just let it go, it's gonna ruin you from the inside. Gonna ruin all your efforts from the inside.
You did your video, Reverend, about that. What you do to a snake? I remember that live. You know what you do to a snake? You chop his head off. And unfortunately, me and my wife made a deal. We made one promise, or two promises: love each other till death do us part. And the other one was, I'm not moving to her hometown, and she's not moving to my hometown. So I love St. Augustine, and my heart's there. I love my family that's still there. There's my mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Mama. She's 64. I wish I would have came down, but you know how that is on Tuesday. Can't turn up on a Tuesday. I'm not a drug dealer. I have to work. But I really ask, and I hope the people that are watching this will continue to watch and pray. Pay attention to what's going on. Ask questions. Started again, talked about local voting, local control. Excuse me, getting the ducks in order. Doing what Shanae said they did in Gainesville, identifying candidates. Go ahead and starting to bankroll them, start to get a war chest for them together. Discourage other people from running against other people and to consolidate our power. That's our power is only as strong as our desire to consolidate our power and work together. So,
all right. Anybody else before we close? Sherry, you about to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm glad you brought that up because I was talking to some people about how much crime has escalated or continued in a lot of our Black communities, and one of the things they were saying we need to call for is for a larger police presence. And I was like, hold up. Right. We do need to address what's going on in our community, and we do need to know and feel empowered to be able to do those things ourselves without calling on more parole and more slave catchers and more oppressors to parole our communities, knowing that they do more harm than they do good. And I just would like to say that if you carry a pessimistic mindset, then you've already been defeated. You're already defeated. We must be realists, but at the same time, we got to have that optimism as well, because that's what's going to motivate and drive you to do something to change. If you don't believe you can do anything, or you don't believe anything can happen, you would even try. Those are my thoughts.
My thoughts were just actually what I was going to state to piggyback off what Shira stated. When we're talking about the increase in crimes in our neighborhoods, increase in gun violence and crimes are a symptom. So they're not the actual disease. They're the symptom of what's lacking in the community. So, and I'll be real with you, it's typically older Black folks and many church people. That's the first response. Their response is if people are loitering outside of a store, it's to call more law enforcement. That's not what the answer is. The answer is to figure out what needs to not be met, that they're outside. Often you see people, their solution is, like I had a man tell me that with they offered somebody education and offered them a college degree, and that they didn't come and buy into it. Well, if they're living in an impoverished neighborhood, they don't know if they're going to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. College is the last thing that's on their minds. So we need to understand that we must first heal a community and equip a community. And then that's how we're actually going to change the issues with the increase in violence. There is a body of research by multiple universities, including UPenn and UCLA, that actually states that when white men are faced with the same issues that black men are, related to poverty, related to homelessness, that white men are actually more prone to be violent. So we need to start also change that narrative and stop allowing people to perpetuate things like black on black crime. In those studies, they also give solutions in order to reduce violence in our community. And those solutions are things like job training programs. Those solutions are actually creating street teams to go out and engage with people and actually improving the blight that are actually in neighborhoods. So if we have all of this research that shows what needs to happen in order to reduce crime in our neighborhoods, then why are municipalities not doing what it takes in order to do that? We must understand that this is by design.
All right, good stuff, people. I think the conversation was good. When you watch it, go ahead and share it. And we just and the reality is we have these conversations hoping that you can see something that you could use to just strengthen the chords in your community, so that we can just share our thoughts and share what works. And so you all have a good one, have a great week, have a great month, and until the next time, God bless you.
God bless.